Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The Trump tariffs are here. Just as Donald Trump promised on the campaign trail, 25% on imports from Mexico and Canada, 10% on China. He's fired the first salvo in his tariff war. But how is the world reacting? Why did President Trump spare India in round one? And how will these tariffs impact Americans? We'll bring you special reports on the Trump tariffs. Also on the show, Elon Musk wants to shut down US aid. What impact will this have? ChatGPT is getting a new feature, an agent that does the research for you. Is this OpenAI's way to catch up with China's DeepSeek? In Japan, Muslims are struggling to bury the dead. Why is Donald Trump bombing Somalia? Cities across the world are dealing with growing rat populations, and the culprit apparently is climate change. Nearly 200 earthquakes struck Greece's Santorini in just 4 days. And what is Forductivity? New work lingo that's doing the rounds. All this and more coming up. First up, the headlines. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrives in the US. He will meet President Donald Trump tomorrow. It will be Trump's first meeting with a foreign leader since returning to the White House. Netanyahu says defeating Hamas and countering Iran are on top of his agenda. The meeting comes as talks are set to begin on the second stage of the Gaza ceasefire. French Prime Minister set to force through the country's budget without a vote. The move is likely to prompt a no-confidence motion, which could topple his minority government. The Prime Minister has been in office for less than 2 months. He is Macron's 6th Prime Minister since 2017. Syria's interim president to visit Turkey tomorrow. This is his second international trip since the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. He went to Saudi Arabia on Sunday. Ankara has had close ties with Syria's new leadership. Talks with President Erdogan will focus on reviving the war-ravaged country's economy. US President Donald Trump cuts all future funding to South Africa, accusing Pretoria of confiscating land and mistreating certain people. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa denies the accusations, but his government's bid to address the land inequality has been divisive. And South Africa unveils the largest Hindu temple in the Southern Hemisphere. The temple is located in Johannesburg. Less than 2% of South Africans identify as Hindu, but it is the most followed religion among the country's Indian community.
Llegar a ocurrir este escenario.
What a start to 2025, 1 month and a full-blown tariff war, all thanks to Donald Trump. Now, to be fair, he did promise to do exactly this, to tax allies and rivals alike. He spent around 10 days calibrating his plans, and then over the weekend he did it. President Trump imposed tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico and China. It's 25% for Canada and Mexico and 10% for China. Now this is unprecedented stuff. All 3 countries are America's biggest trading partners. Mexico is a neighbor, Canada too is a neighbor, also a NATO ally, yet Trump has not spared them. His tariffs are a big policy gamble. They will target imports worth $1.4 trillion. If it works, Trump will make it to the history books. And if it doesn't, well, he'll still make it to the history books, but in a different light. So tonight, let's look at this unfolding tariff war. Why is Donald Trump waging it? What has been the market reaction? And how are these countries responding? First, some Tariff 101. Tariffs are basically a tax on foreign goods. Say you're importing a Chinese smartphone from Beijing. One phone is worth $10,000, for example. And Trump's tariff is 10%. So the tax on this import is $1,000. On paper, this tax is paid by importers, but the actual burden falls on the customers. Why? Because the importers will sell the phone at a higher cost to cover the tariff. This is a classic side effect of tariffs, a rise in domestic prices. Trump has rejected this possibility, though, but he did hint at short-term disruptions.
Tariffs don't cause inflation, they cause success. Cause big success. So we're going to have great success. There could be some temporary short-term disruption, and people will understand that.
And why is Trump doing it? To fight drugs and illegal migration. That's what he says. He says both things, drugs and illegal immigrants, are pouring through the two borders. The northern one with Canada and the southern one with Mexico. These are America's two borders. Tariffs are his way of forcing them to act, to make them tighten the border. And what's been the reaction? Well, the markets don't like this sort of protectionism. They prefer free trade policies, and it shows in the numbers. The German markets are down by 1.9%. The French index is also down by 1.7%. In Japan, the Nikkei closed almost 2.6% down. And in India, the Sensex was 0.4% down. And in the US, the markets have just opened. S&P 500 is already 1.6% down. Most big firms are bleeding money, and this is probably just the beginning of the slide because Trump is not done yet. He has also promised tariffs on the European Union.
We are treated so badly. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm products, essentially. They don't take almost anything. And we have a tremendous deficit with the European Union, so we'll be doing something very substantial with the European Union. We're going to bring the level up to where it should be.
Now, the business community is split on this. The CEO of JP Morgan earlier supported tariffs. He said they can be used effectively. But America's largest newspaper is not impressed. That's the Wall Street Journal. Their editors are calling it the dumbest trade war in history. No such split among politicians, though. Leaders across the world are opposing Trump's tariffs. Both Canada and Mexico are doing tit for tat. They're imposing tariffs on American goods. Canada has already released a list of targeted products. More than 1,200 items have been listed. This includes US guns, meat and alcohol. The first wave of these tariffs will be imposed on Tuesday. The rest will follow in 21 days. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada spoke to the press on Saturday. He struck an emotional yet defiant note.
History has made us friends. Economics has made us partners, and necessity has made us allies. That rang true for many decades prior to President Kennedy's time in office, and in the decades since. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of the Korean Peninsula, from the fields of Flanders to the streets of Kandahar, we have fought and died alongside you.
Trust Trudeau to dramatize things. He's also planning to sue the Trump administration to file a complaint at the WTO. That's the World Trade Organization. Trudeau says the tariffs violate a free trade deal. So he's going to file a legal case. China is planning the same. They have slammed Trump's 10% tariffs, and they too will approach the World Trade Organization. But the backlash does not end here. If Trump slaps tariffs on Europe, this could spiral out of control. Today, European Union leaders met in Brussels. They were joined by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Their primary goal was to discuss defense, but naturally, Trump came up. The EU appears to be united on the tariff threat. The Polish Prime Minister called it a stupid tariff war, and French President Macron called it an attack.
It's simple. We think the priority is this strategic agenda and the security of our borders. If we're attacked on trade topics, as a power that holds, Europe has to make itself respected and react.
Well, this is why we called it a gamble. Trump is imposing tariffs across the board on allies, on neighbors, and on rivals. But that blunts the impact of tariff pressure. Any tool must be used with tact, whether it's a weapon, a financial policy, or even words. So Trump has launched the first wave of his trade war. Mexico, Canada and China are the first victims. For now, Trump has spared India, even though he kept criticizing India during his campaign. As a candidate, Donald Trump called India, and I'm quoting, a tariff king and a very big abuser.
India, we don't have to talk about own. If India charges us 100%, do we charge them nothing for the same? You know, they send in a bicycle and we send them a bicycle. They charge us 100 and 200. India charges a lot. If they want to charge us, that's fine, but we're going to charge them the same thing.
So why is Trump holding back now? Perhaps because he's set to meet Prime Minister Modi. Both leaders are supposed to hold talks this month, so Trump could be giving diplomacy a chance. There is talk of a mini trade deal, one that addresses Trump's concerns. Japan did something similar during Trump's first term. They signed a limited trade agreement. It reduced or eliminated tariffs on some industrial and agricultural goods. Now, India could end up using the same template. You see, Donald Trump believes in striking deals, and India seems to be playing to that mindset. Last week, India laid the groundwork for a deal. The budget was announced on Saturday, the union budget. India slashed tariffs on multiple goods. Peak tariff rates like 150%, 125%, 100% have all been removed. Import taxes on high-end bikes have been lowered, like on Trump's favorite Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Import tax on these bikes has been cut by 10%. It has been brought down to 40% now. Even car makers like Tesla are being wooed. India has lowered taxes on luxury cars. Earlier, the rate was 125%. Now it has been reduced to 70%. Beyond these, taxes on top 30 American imports to India like crude oil, aeroplanes and LPG or liquefied natural gas remain minimal. Now, they are in the range of 0 to 7.5%. These changes could come up for discussion and lead to meaningful conversation on trade. It could happen when Prime Minister Modi sits down with Trump in a couple of weeks from now. But what kind of deal should India push for? I suppose the specifics are still being worked out, but India should not accept any one-sided agreement. There needs to be some give and take, and India is in a good position to extract meaningful concessions. Trump's trade war has created opportunities for India. Tariffs on Mexico, Canada and China will create a void in the American market. India could step up and fill the gaps. Some sectors can make an immediate impact, like electronics and machinery. On this front, Donald Trump wants to cut reliance on China, and India could prove to be a viable substitute. Electronics imports from India are anyway growing. In the current financial year, they have grown by 28%. The surge was driven by smartphone production. This sector could benefit from Trump's current trade war. Similarly, other sectors like EVs and batteries, pharmaceuticals, textiles and apparels, clean energy, jewelry and precious metals, organic chemicals, iron and steel items, all these sectors have a rare opportunity. Their products will face less competition in the United States as things stand today. They can try securing more export contracts there, provided America meets India halfway. Indian exporters need better access to the US market. They want free movement of goods and more visas for Indian manufacturers. And India has raised this specific concern. It came up last month when External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar was in Washington, D.C. He attended Trump's inauguration. Later, he met with his new American counterpart, Marco Rubio. Rubio is the new U.S. Secretary of State, basically their foreign minister. He held his first bilateral meeting with S. Jaishankar, and the Indian minister raised the issue of visa delays.
When it came to various regulations and processes, I also flagged some concerns which are very widespread in India about delays in visas, and the relationship is not well served if it takes that many days for people to get a visa, because ultimately those visa delays do impact business. They do affect tourism. They in many ways constrain the people-to-people interactions, which is the foundation of our relationship.
So there is a real opportunity for a strong deal. Both sides have something meaningful to offer to each other. India is open to lowering tariffs. In return, it wants free market access as well as easy movement of professionals. Now, it all comes down to Donald Trump. If he wants a deal, he should meet India halfway. Now let's do a deep dive. US President Donald Trump's tariffs have raised fears across the world. But are they really that bad? Will they really shake the foundations of the global economy? Trump definitely does not think so, but he does acknowledge that there will be a price to pay.
No, I'm not concerned. We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country, not every country, but almost, and we're going to change it. It's been unfair.
Trump said that Americans will face a little pain in the short term, but this will help fix US trade deficits in the long term. It reminds me of the saying by the economist John Maynard Keynes, in the long run, we are all dead. So let's put Trump's long-term plans aside for now and focus on the immediate impacts. For now, his tariffs target Canada, Mexico, and China. These are the top 3 exporters to the United States. Canada sends them a lot of oil, gas, lumber, and aluminium. Mexico sends computers, wiring, and medical instruments. Both nations send cars, completed ones, and auto parts. Now look at this 2017 report by the Canadian government. It talks about the interconnected auto manufacturing situation. Car parts cross the US-Canada border 6 times before a vehicle is finished. But what happens when blanket tariffs are in place? Then each of these transfers attracts an additional fee, raising the price of the car multiple times over and basically destroying the industry in its current form. It's a similar situation with Mexico. Raw materials go to the US, they are turned into parts, then sent to Mexico for assembly, and the final cars are then sold back in the US. This system will break too. And this is just the automobile sector. The agricultural sector in both Mexico and Canada are intrinsically linked with the US as well. Take a look at this explainer by the Canadian Agricultural Ministry. It describes a typical American breakfast: wheat grown in Canada, processed in the US, cranberries grown in Canada, processed in the US, same with oats, strawberries, and pork. This breakfast plate does not work without free trade, not in the current prices, at the current prices anyway. With Trump's incoming tariffs and then Trudeau's retaliatory ones, the price of this all-American breakfast will go through the roof, in the short run anyway. The US could try and substitute its dependence on Canadian agricultural goods. Maybe Americans can do without the famous Canadian maple syrup. But what about tropical food from Mexico? Bananas and tomatoes and the eternally controversial avocados. You can't really grow all that in the American climate, not at the same scale. 63% of US vegetable imports come from Mexico. About 50% of all fruits and nuts as well, they come from Mexico. So with the new tariffs, Americans should get ready for a less healthy diet or be prepared to shell out far more. Prices will almost certainly rise. And no, it's not the exporting countries that will bear them. Tariffs are paid by importers in the United States, the people importing the cars and fruits and wood and oil. These are US-based entities. They will pay a fee to the US government to sell these products in the US market. Now, what usually happens is that they pass on the costs to the end consumers, the customers, the average American people. Basically, it's a new domestic tax. American money will make its way to the government coffers just because they want to keep eating Mexican tomatoes. There are a lot of counter-arguments to this. One is that people will opt for domestic goods instead. They will buy American. Another argument is that the importing companies will take a hit on their profits. They will absorb the tariff costs, not pass them on to customers. Both these arguments rely on a fairy tale: corporate benevolence. Think about it. Why wouldn't a domestic car company hike their own prices? Foreign cars just got more expensive. An American company can also raise their prices by just a little less than their foreign counterparts. The domestic company will start raking in extra profits while still being marginally more competitive than the foreign brand. Either way, it's the customer who loses. And the second argument about importers absorbing the tariff costs: which company do you bet on to do that? Which company is so kind as to take a profit hit to shield American customers? I guess we'll wait and see. One last argument in support of tariffs is the US dollar price. The US dollar value will surge. It's already happening. Tariff supporters say this automatically makes foreign goods cheaper, countering the inflationary effects of tariffs. This also helps improve trade deficits. Now, this argument also relies on an assumption that the dollar value will rise in proportion to the costs, neatly cancelling out any price rises. But really, when does anything happen so perfectly? The dollar value increase will help soften the blow, but it probably won't erase the effects completely. Meanwhile, the dollar rise affects the rest of the world. Take India, for example. The rupee has hit a record low. It fell below 87 rupees to a dollar. This means our imports just got more expensive and our exports became less valuable. Almost every country will experience this. Without deals to trade bilaterally in local currencies, we are all at the mercy of dollar fluctuations. But local currency deals come with their own risks. Trump has threatened tariffs on countries who ditch the dollar. BRICS nations in particular could face 100% tariffs, he said. And this includes India. So all our software and service sales to the US could suddenly become uncompetitive. So far, Donald Trump has just targeted Canada, Mexico, and China. His next target could be Europe and then possibly the BRICS nations. Basically, everyone that the US runs trade deficits with. Everyone exporting things to the United States. So unless the world finds a way to bypass the US, we're all in for a rough few years. There's more drama in the United States, an internal tussle between two agencies, Elon Musk's Doge and US aid. We're talking about Hollywood-style drama, a standoff outside the head office, a clamor for secret files, and a public feud on social media. Let's meet the main characters first. USAID stands for United States Agency for International Development. It's a humanitarian agency of the US government. It was set up by John F. Kennedy in 1961. Its job? To run aid missions across the world, things like vaccination drives, humanitarian shipments, and college scholarships. USAID is the biggest donor in the whole world. It makes up 42% of all United Nations aid. But there's another side too. America often uses aid to meddle in foreign affairs, to secure influence in other nations. So its legacy is mixed. Which brings us to the second main character in our story, Elon Musk and Doge. Doge is Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Its job is to downsize the US government, whether it's by firing workers or trimming budgets. And US aid is a prime target. President Donald Trump has already frozen most foreign aid programs. His next target seems to be US aid. Reports say Doge officials tried to forcefully enter the USAID building, that's the main headquarters in Washington, D.C., but the security officers denied them entry. Instead of leaving, Doge agents threatened to call US Marshals to forcefully break into the building. Eventually, they did get in. Doge managed to access the main control system. This allows you to lock out employees from USAID. It also lets you read internal emails. Reports also say that Doge agents sought classified files. Now, these are top security documents. Only people with security clearance can read them. Doge says no such documents were taken, but who knows? If you can break into a government building, nothing is off limits, certainly not lying. But what is Musk's issue with this agency? He says US aid is politically partisan and beyond repair, that it funds radical left missions globally, sometimes even anti-American ones. Elon Musk has called it a criminal organization and a viper's nest. Clearly, some very strong emotions there. So what's his solution? To shut down the whole thing. Musk says President Trump also feels the same, but he hasn't said so yet. Reports say Trump's plan is to downsize USAID to maybe fold it within the state government. And if that happens, it will be slow death. Nearly 100 USAID staffers have already been put on leave. Among them are 2 security officers, the same ones who denied entry to Doge agents. The USAID website was also taken down on Saturday. Their X account is also offline, so clearly it's the end of USAID as we know it, and Trump has no reason to walk back on this. His supporters do not like foreign aid. They want American money to be spent in America. So how will this play out globally? Well, there are 2 parts to it. The first is the humanitarian impact. The second is the political impact. USAID has programs in almost 51 countries. They fund certain critical operations like sanitation and vaccination. But if the money stops, so will the work. In fact, that's what happened in Syria last week. Workers at the Al-Hol displacement camp were told to stop working. Why? Because USAID was frozen. This is not how responsible countries behave. If you commit, you must follow through. Plus, the United States has a responsibility here. US bombs have destroyed West Asian cities and homes. The least they can do is fund the rebuild. Which brings us to the second part, the political impact of USAID's gutting. Former US officials have accused the agency of meddling. They say it's an extension of the CIA. And there is truth here. USAID has supported civil society groups abroad. They are known to destabilize regimes. Iran has made such accusations, so have Venezuela, Georgia, and Hungary. Like I said, it's a mixed legacy. USAID had to be separated from the deep state. You cannot have a CIA B team pretending to do charity abroad. At the same time, you cannot let America off the hook. Their intervention scarred millions of people. It is their responsibility to help survivors, to rebuild cities and homes. If not, there would be no accountability.
This is one of the best things OpenAI has ever launched.
For the last 3 weeks, one name has taken the AI world by storm. DeepSeek, the Chinese AI startup. They launched new AI models. They made them cheap. Essentially, Beijing crashed the AI party and stole the spotlight. And where did that leave OpenAI? Well, with a major case of FOMO. FOMO, of course, is the fear of missing out. These were the guys who made AI cool. But now someone else is stealing all the attention. So OpenAI started dropping a lot of updates. The first was the 03 mini model, a freebie to keep users hooked. And now they have upgraded ChatGPT. It's getting a new feature. It's called Deep Research. I know it sounds fancy, but what does it actually do? You see, when you ask ChatGPT a question, it simply generates the answer, like a know-it-all friend. But Deep Research takes it up a notch. It gives you the answer, but it also shows you how it got there. Basically, it does all the heavy lifting for you, research, sources, and a summary. It is all served on a silver platter. So lazy students, your prayers have been answered. But jokes aside, some deep research, or deep research rather, is not a magic wand. The research takes some time, up to 30 minutes for a prompt. Sometimes it also hallucinates. It makes up a lot of facts. And here's the kicker. It is not free. Only pro users get access, and that too for $200 per month. And you can't go crazy with that. You only get 100 queries in a month. So basically $2 per question, which is not a hefty fee, but it's not really cheap either.
The rate of improvement of artificial intelligence has been increasing. Only a few years ago, the systems barely worked. Now today, we launched a new system this morning in Tokyo that is a new level for the whole world. Or an agent that can do significant tasks and create a lot of economic value.
And OpenAI is not the only one dropping new models. Europe wants in on the action too. Enter Mistral. It's a French AI startup. Mistral has dropped its latest model, the Small 3. It's not exactly a name that screams power, but Mistral claims it can outperform a lot of its rivals. And just like DeepSeek, this one too is open source, meaning anyone can tinker with the code. So the AI war is officially on. Who will come out on top? Well, we are not too sure, but there's one thing we know for sure. China has changed the rules of this game. For the longest time, artificial intelligence was like an exclusive club. Billion-dollar investments, closed-door partnerships, and the most powerful chips, all locked away for a select few. Silicon Valley developed closed AI models. The code, the training process, everything was confidential. But now that AI bubble just got popped. If you actually use DeepSeek and compare it to ChatGPT, you'll notice something. It's not that different. Its answers are on par with ChatGPT. It hallucinates just like the rest. It refuses to talk about China, which is not a surprise. So it's far from perfect. But this is not just about how good DeepSeek is. It's about what it represents. DeepSeek is not just another AI model, it's a counter-narrative, an alternative to the Western way of building artificial intelligence, a more democratic way of developing models. And here's the real twist. China is the one leading the charge here. The same Beijing that is known for strict censorship, it is now handing the world open source AI models, code that anyone can use, code that anyone can build on. And what about the democratic West? The countries that once championed open technology. They're now scrambling to lock AI down with regulatory pushes, with talk of guardrails and big tech lobbying. And this is all a way to keep control. The West says it's about safety, but look closer and you'll see it's all about power. Because right now that power is shifting. China has shown that the future of AI is open source. AI tools should never be locked away behind corporate walls. They're meant to be open to all. Because that's where the magic happens. Inclusion breeds innovation. When you open the doors, you're inviting everyone, the small research labs, the universities, developers from emerging markets, all of them get a chance to contribute. And that means a more diverse, a more inclusive AI ecosystem. Not one that is just controlled by Silicon Valley. Of course, the open source model comes with its own set of risks. There are concerns over privacy, potential misuse, and regulatory headaches, and all of that will have to be fixed. But it's still a better alternative than artificial intelligence being controlled by a select few. Now to Japan, where a new crisis is unfolding. Muslims in Japan are struggling to bury their dead. Around 230,000 Muslims live in Japan, but there are only 7 cemeteries available to them, and space is running out fast. 99% of people in Japan are cremated, so burials are rare. Plus, there's strong opposition from the locals who feel that burials are unhygienic, that they contaminate land. Historically, burials were common in Japan, but after World War II, cremation became the norm. Today, the country is struggling to build more cemeteries, but it must find a solution. After all, Japan plans to admit 820,000 foreign nationals over the next 5 years. Birth rates have dropped to record lows in the country, and Japan's population is aging fast. So Tokyo is counting on foreign workers to sustain its economy. But is the country ready for more cultural diversity? Our next report explores.
Muslims in Japan are fighting for the right to bury their loved ones. This has become a growing crisis. By the year 2020, there were about 230,000 Muslims living in Japan, but there are only 7 cemeteries for them in the entire country, and even those are not exclusively for Muslims. Japan is a nation of cremation. Over 99% of the dead are cremated in the country. Internment is not just rare, but it faces serious cultural challenges as well. Plans to build new cemeteries face stiff opposition. Most of it comes from the local communities. According to one official at Japan's health ministry, burials are often banned because locals don't find them hygienic. In 2020, a Muslim organization in Oita tried to solve the issue. Oita is a city located in Japan's Kyushu island. The group bought 8,000 square meters of land. The plan was to convert it into a cemetery. It would have space for about 100 Muslim graves. But the project hit a roadblock. A group of local residents submitted a petition. They tried to block the project. They moved the local authorities against it. On what grounds? There's an irrigation pond near the site. The locals said that the cemetery could contaminate the water. The plan was stalled, and its current status remains unclear. This has put the Muslim community in a tough spot. Existing cemeteries are rapidly filling up, and the scarcity has forced some families to transport the remains of their loved ones over long distances. Not everyone has that option, since transporting corpses can be quite costly in Japan. This wasn't always the case in Japan. Before the Second World War, burials were common. But after the war, cremations became the norm. There were two main reasons. First, the lack of space. And second, a belief that cremation is more hygienic. Japan now faces a difficult challenge. Birth rates have hit record lows. At the same time, Japan has one of the oldest populations in the world. 1 in 10 Japanese people is 80 years old or older. This has forced Tokyo to open its doors to immigration. Over the next 5 years, Japan wants to admit 820,000 foreign nationals. Such a large influx will demand greater cultural diversity, but the struggle over Muslim burial suggests that Japan may not be ready for it.
Our next story is from Africa. The US bombed the country on Saturday. It was the first known airstrike ordered by US President Donald Trump in his second term. The target, the Islamic State terror group. Trump put up this video on social media. Take a look at this first. The video shows the US bombing some hills. It was targeting caves, housing members of the Islamic State Somalia province. Reports say it was a direct hit. 46 militants were allegedly killed, including 12 foreign fighters. The regional Islamic State leader is said to be among the casualties. President Trump alluded to this in another social media post. He said the US targeted, quote-unquote, senior ISIS attack planner. He's most likely referring to this man, Abdul Qadir Mumin. He was the leader of the Islamic State Somalia province. Let's take a closer look at the situation on the ground. The build-up to this US airstrike. Somalia has been dealing with terror groups for years. The most infamous is Al-Shabaab. It is linked to Al-Qaeda. And it has been waging war on the Somali government since the year 2012. In 2015, there was a split in Al-Shabaab. Some fighters based in Somalia's Puntland region broke ranks. They chose to ally with the Islamic State instead. And this is the faction that became the Islamic State Somalia province. And they were the ones targeted in the American strike. As I said, this faction is based in Puntland. It is an autonomous region in Somalia, often at odds with the central government. It acts as an independent region with its own defense forces. They have been carrying out operations against the Islamic State. They began in December. They're working to eradicate the terror group, which has a stronghold in a local mountain range. Puntland and Somalia have been getting help from allied nations, like the US and the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. They have been helping with surveillance and intelligence. The US has an aircraft carrier nearby in the Red Sea, the USS Harry S. Truman. That's how the US was close enough to offer support. So this is the background. On Saturday, Trump gave the go-ahead. He ordered a strike on the Islamic State terrorists hiding in their mountain caves. The US scrambled its jets on the USS Harry S. Truman. FA-18 Super Hornets were deployed. The United States Africa Command, or AFRICOM, released these shots. These are the jets used to strike the Somali terror cell. After the strike, Trump issued a threat. He said, and I quote, "The message to ISIS and all others who would attack Americans is that we will find you and we will kill you." There's absolutely no ambiguity in that, and it may come as a bit of a surprise considering his actions during his first term. Trump had ordered the withdrawal of US troops from Somalia. This was in December 2020, right before he left office. It was Joe Biden who reversed this order. As soon as he took over in 2021, Biden had been working to eradicate the Islamic State in Somalia. He'd ordered a strike there in 2023, again in the mountains. That might explain Trump's dig at Biden in his post. He said, and I'm quoting again, "Biden and his cronies wouldn't act quickly enough." Whatever Trump's motivation, the Somali leadership is quite happy with their help. Their president, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, put up this message. He called Trump's leadership bold and decisive. And he also said that Somalia and the US had a shared fight against terrorism. Those were his words. It seems like a move to get Trump to stick around this time. But will it work? Or was this airstrike just one for the road? We'll see in the coming days. Now let's talk about climate change. It's heating up the earth. But apparently only we humans are feeling the burn because some other species are having a ball, like rats. Rising temperatures are leading to a massive increase in rat populations. 11 global cities are seeing a boom. Basically, the ratpocalypse is on the horizon. And this is not your typical disaster because rats are carriers of diseases. So what exactly is driving this rise? And how will this impact our cities and our lives? Our next report tells you.
Record heat waves, glaciers having a midlife crisis, coastal cities evolving into official snorkel zones. Climate change was already a disaster, but now, well, it's getting a whole lot worse. And why? Because it's giving rats the edge they've been waiting for. Yup, you heard that right. The ratocalypse is on the horizon. According to a new Science Advances study, when the temperature rises, rats don't just hang on for dear life, they thrive. They eat more and they produce more babies, meaning more rat kingdoms. But the fun doesn't end there. Rats are also enjoying the fruits of urban sprawl. Less vegetation, denser housing, and a perfect storm of underfunded rodent control budgets means, in short, rats are living their best life. They've got prime real estate in your local subway stations, and they're putting down their roots everywhere, from crumbling alleyways to fancy apartment buildings. So which cities are in trouble? 11 major global cities are now rolling out the red carpet for rats. In America, Washington and San Francisco are on top. Shocker, right? You'd think New York City would be leading the pack. But turns out the rat kingdom is expanding out west. But don't worry, the Big Apple is also part of this list. In Canada, Toronto is grappling with this issue. In Europe, the worst affected city is Amsterdam. France, too, has a rodent problem, but it's decided to reclaim the rat as a quirky symbol.
In Marseille, the rats hang out a bit Mediterranean style. They put the chair out and then there's a chat and everything. They're out and about in Marseille. They don't hide too much.
Marseille is trying to be cool about it, but a ratocalypse is nothing to be happy about. Rats are disease vectors. They can transmit more than 50 zoonotic pathogens. That means the more the rats, the more people get sick. According to the New York City government, they're also bad for your mental health. Apparently, seeing rats on a daily basis increases the risk of depression by 5 times. Guess no one told that to Ratatouille. So what's the way out? Well, it's all about rat-proofing your life. Secure your food waste and don't let it turn into a buffet for rats. If you can't handle a rat menace, at least you can handle a garbage problem. And if you think it's just a small problem, think again. We're not talking about a minor increase in rat population, we're talking about a full-scale rodent uprising. Heat, urbanization, and lack of rodent control programs means just one thing. The rats are winning. They're taking over our cities. So while you're trying to survive the heat waves and the rising seas, don't forget to watch your back. Because in the fight against climate change, the rats just might be the ultimate survivors.
I have a question for you. How many times did you action it, circle back, or drill down today? I ask because it's only Monday and because business speak is endemic to work. No matter your age, no matter the kind of work you do, the workplace is a jargon-littered battlefield and you have to find your way through a fog of corporate lingo. In recent years, this has become even tougher. Business buzzwords are evolving like never before, partially because of the internet, because of the young entering the workforce, but mostly because of the times we live in. Work is evolving, so new words are propping up, and this is very much a post-pandemic phenomenon. With years of hybrid work, productivity has gained a lot of attention. Now that workers are returning to office, there is a productivity theatre at play, or should I say, forductivity. Apparently, this is the new work lingo. It's a portmanteau or blend word. For as in fake and productivity as productivity. Together, that's forductivity. This is where workers give the appearance of productivity at the expense of doing any real work. And if you think this is a Gen Z buzzword to shirk off work, well, think again, because how many times did you hear phrases like these? I'm swamped with emails. I have so many meetings. I'm rammed at the moment. Don't think I can take this up. This could mean that the worker is actually busy, but such statements are also ubiquitous with looking busy. At least managers think so. And new research shows this. Nearly half of all managers are worried that their employees are faking their workload. But do you know what's worse? What's worse than filling your days with meaningless surface-level tasks? Showing up for the sake of it, then doing as you like anyway. Some workers hate returning to office so much, let alone doing the bare minimum, that they barely want to stay at work. So they're coffee badging. That's another buzzword. It's about showing your face in office, getting credit for being there, then leaving as soon as possible. Like marking your attendance and then bunking anyway, and completing work obligations at home in your own time. It is the ultimate form of hybrid work and rebellion. But why are people doing this? Well, the answer lies in the very root of corporate buzzwords. Just look at these two, forductivity and coffee badging. They're very different, but they share a common thread. They're both a little annoying. Many agree that this word salad is bizarre. So why are workers increasingly embracing it? And we can ask this about most corporate jargon. Double-clicking, tabling, flagging up. Survey after survey shows that workers find these words annoying, so why do we put up with them? Well, science says people do it to keep up, to understand what's going on, and to establish themselves in the corporate culture. Think of it as human peacocking. It's what experts say. Using corporate jargon is the human version of peacocking. And in the corporate world, it's much like doing it in the animal world. It shows the desire for status in the workplace, the desire for recognition, the desire to fit in. People keep up with changing language. They use the overused words to show that they're capable and that they belong. The terms may be ridiculous, but it is performative professionalism. Productivity simply takes it to another level with performative productivity. More than 200 earthquakes in 4 days. Over the past few days, tremors have rattled the Instagram island of Santorini. Millions of people flock to the Greek island every year, but this time they're running away because one quake after another has hit the whitewashed island, prompting authorities to deploy emergency crews, to close schools, and ban access to seaside areas and announce additional flights to help people flee. But what's behind the string of quakes? And is the worst over yet? Our next report tells you.
It's hardly a surprise that Santorini is on so many people's bucket lists with its pristine whitewashed houses, dazzling panoramas, blue waters and romantic sunsets. Though this weekend, people were not flocking towards but away from the Greek island. Over the past 4 days, more than 200 earthquakes have been recorded in the Aegean Sea between Santorini and Amorgos, which is another Greek island. The strongest earthquake reached a magnitude of 4.6.
My personal experience is that I have never felt an earthquake so strongly and with such frequency. An earthquake every 10 or 20 minutes. It's the first time. I have never experienced this before.
Dozens of tremors have caused loud rumbles and rattled Santorini, prompting authorities to close schools, deploy emergency crews, blare mobile phones with alert warnings, ban access to seaside areas, and announce additional flights to help people leave the tourist hub.
This time things are serious. Last night I slept outside my house. I was afraid to go inside. And today I said I'm going to leave. I will go to a nearby island to get away until things calm down.
You can see it for yourself. People want to leave. There is no way out. God forbid if something happens in Athenio, the port, we're cut off because we only have sea and sky.
Santorini is home to just about 20,000 permanent residents, and its whitewashed villages draw more than 3 million visitors annually. But this island is no stranger to earthquakes. It sits on several fault lines known as the Hellenic Volcanic Arc. This is one of the most active volcanic fields in Europe. You see this crescent-shaped caldera? It has helped Santorini get the Instagram island nickname. But this caldera has a dark history. It was created by one of the largest volcanic eruptions in the history of mankind. It happened more than 3,500 years ago, around 1620 BC. It destroyed a large part of the island, devastated its ancient civilization, and blanketed much of the island in ash. Although it's still an active volcano, its last notable eruption was in 1956. A 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck Santorini, followed by an 80-feet tsunami. At least 53 people were killed, and one-third of the houses on the island collapsed. So, do these recent tremors have something to do with the volcano? Experts don't think so. Authorities say it's not related to volcanic activity. The seismic activity is due to tectonic movements. As the tremors continue at regular intervals with the same intensity, Santorini is bracing itself for a much bigger earthquake followed by a tsunami. While Santorini hopes it doesn't come to that, the island's history is reason enough to be fearful of the possibility.
Los Angeles faced a major disaster today, and no, I'm not talking about the wildfires. I'm talking about the Grammys, America's elite music awards. And don't get us wrong, we are not mocking the musicians or their music. That's all fine. What wasn't was the red carpet looks. Like Jaden Smith, who came with a castle on his head. On most days, that would make you stand out, but today was not that day, because then came Kanye West and his wife, Bianca Censori. Her fashion mantra was pretty clear: less is more, none is best. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Over 6 million devotees took a dip at the Mahakumbh on the Hindu festival of Basant Panchami. Heavy rain lashes parts of northeastern Australia, leading to flash floods. And Iraq rebuilds an ancient city that was destroyed by the Islamic State. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1994, US President Bill Clinton ended the trade embargo on Vietnam. It was lifted after 19 years. The embargo had been in place since the Vietnam War. Clinton's move was a significant step in normalizing relations between the two countries. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Americans want on POWs and MIAs is to end the trade embargo.